want to dive into some of the headlines with a panel of pundits. Casey Harper, managing editor for broadcast of the Washington Stand, and Kyle Campbell, host of podcast Politically Basic. Kyle, welcome.
Hi, Tony. Great to be with you.
It's good to have you back on the program.
Thank you, sir.
Casey, haven't seen you in about 25 minutes.
That's right, yeah, too long.
All right, so I want to pick up where I left off just a few moments ago with Tim Miller. Look, just for those that may be tuning in for the first time, I'm former law enforcement, veteran of the Marine Corps, law and order guy. So I support what the president is doing to bring law and order to this city. I was talking to the governor and to the Attorney General of Louisiana last week about what he's proposed maybe for New Orleans, Chicago. But I have some concerns, and I want to ask you, because both of you are younger than me. I don't know if people can tell that by the camera, but you're a little younger than me. But I'm a little concerned about the militarization of law enforcement and seeing like what we see in third world countries where we have military walking around to keep order. Kyle, does that bother you at all?
It's not bothering me right now, Tony, but I have a different perspective, of course. I'm in Southern California. I'm in and out and around Los Angeles all the time. Los Angeles is falling apart. It is not a safe community. We would love to see the National Guard come in just temporarily and get things back to some level in which LAPD or local law enforcement could get their hands around it again. I don't think it's necessarily a scenario in which they have the ability to do what a guard type force could come in and get there.
They don't have the ability, or there's not the political will there to get it done?
Well, I certainly think it's a failure of leadership to do anything. And for reasons that are beyond all of us all the time, we don't understand why this political leadership is failing to keep its residents and citizens safe. They seem to really be adamant about not doing that. But in my case, I'll tell you this. We've been running around the city for the last few days out here. I'm a single woman. I have 2 young girls. I feel completely safe here. Now, we're staying in some touristy spots, but we're venturing out. We're walking around at night. I'll tell you this, Tony, if I'm out and about by myself and I have the option to see someone from the National Guard fully armed walking toward me on the street, or a criminal who's been in and out of jail 14 times and sizes me up really fast, I'm going to take the former. And I agree with you and agree with Tim, it's not a long-term solution, but to come in and get things cleaned up to a point where it's safer, I would take it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the perspective. Casey?
Sure. Well, I mean, there's 2 questions to ask. One, is crime really bad in these big cities? And the answer is a resounding yes. So we're setting the background. It's very violent. Women do not feel dangerous. You're fortunate you could go for a run this morning in the cool and feel safe. But I think a lot of women.
Well, I'm safe because I don't
look at you.
I don't run alone.
Young man.
I don't run alone.
Well, there you go. But are these cities dangerous? Absolutely. Now that doesn't justify everything, but it's important to acknowledge that because some Democrats have not acknowledged it. And then the second question is, why is this happening? I think what you're getting at is this really a problem of resources? Mostly no. It's mostly a political will question.
Right.
On the one hand, they're not arresting people like for shoplifting, and then the prosecutors don't prosecute them.
Right.
And it creates this cycle. We just had a viral video of someone stabbing someone on camera on a subway, and they had been arrested, I think, 14 times and let out.
Right.
And it's political.
I was having that conversation with the Attorney General of Louisiana last week. So that is the reality. Okay, that is the reality. My point is, it's a symptom.
Yeah.
There is an underlying issue, and I think we have, and this is what we do here in Washington Watch, we look at these things from a biblical perspective. Paul in 2 Thessalonians tells us that the lawless one is coming, but yet the spirit of the lawless one is already at work in this age. What we're seeing as we move toward the return of Christ is that there is a spirit of lawlessness. Now, what keeps it in check? Paul talks about that. The one who keeps it in check is the Holy Spirit present in the church. My point is, the church is doing its job to restrain the spirit of lawlessness that is at work in our culture, our country, our communities.
That's it. And if the government, we cannot rely on government officials to do that. And I think that's been a problem, Tony, for several years since the pandemic, is we have put too much hope and trust and faith in the government systems and agencies to keep us safe, and they're not doing their job, not even at a base level. The church absolutely has to step into that space and take their rightful role.
And that's what my argument is that the Trump administration is doing by their protection of religious liberty and religious freedom, like we saw today at the Museum of the Bible, that he's creating the space for the church to do its work. My concern is that the church is still kind of like a couch potato. It really isn't taking this invitation to engage. They're what you were saying, Kyle, is kind of relying on the government to solve this problem. Government is not the solution to this. I'm grateful that they're allowing space and protection to provide a solution, but this isn't going to require the church.
Right, and I think what does that look like practically? Well, how about Christians running for a local office, trying to become prosecutors, Daniels, Josephs, Esthers, not just, we all want a Christian president. And of course, there's a lot of talk about that. Right. What about a Christian prosecutor, a Christian mayor, a Christian city council?
School board member.
Exactly.
I mean, Kyle, you've been working there in California on this egregious attack on parental rights. Putting children at risk is something that Washington, the Family Research Council, has been speaking into. We had, Casey, I know we had some, I don't know how many signatures that we took on the petition that were delivered there. But Kyle, bring us up to date.
Sure. I heard that you guys just delivered over 20,000 signatures opposing AB 495, and we are so grateful to you for doing that. And just appreciative that people outside of the state of California are paying attention to this one because it's bad.
All right, describe it for our listeners, those that may have not heard it
it's in
before.
a long line of legislation that really wants to remove parental rights. And this is across the board. It's not just having to do with public school children. This affects all children in the state. And what this does essentially is it overrides something we have called a caregiver's authorization affidavit. If someone's being deported, essentially, they have the opportunity to fill out an affidavit and say, hey, I would like my mother, my brother, someone close to me in my world to take custody of my children temporarily while I get my situation sorted out. We have all those systems set in place in California. There's not a gap there, Tony. And so what is such a head scratcher about 495 is that it takes what was working just fine before, but it removes all of the guardrails. You don't have to be a relative or a close friend of the family. You don't have to get parental authorization. Now, it was just amended. This just happened a few days ago. It was amended to change language having to do with that non-related adult,
right,
and also to not have to check that box saying, hey, I tried to find the parents and couldn't. But it's still extremely dangerous.
That's like putting lipstick on a pig.
100%.
Yeah. So what are the prospects of that? What are the next steps for that?
So it went into suspense file as we thought it would. It came right out. It was slightly amended. It does not make a difference. This bill needs to be scrapped and dead immediately. It's going to go to a Senate vote on Friday, this Friday. And then it will go to the governor's desk. I believe it will. And I'm very concerned that he is going to sign this. He's been real squirrely as he,
what's the time frame?
Runs for president. It will go to his desk after this Friday, should it move forward, and I believe that it does. And he can sign it right away.
Okay. Well, folks, I want all those who did sign our petition, I want to say thank you, but I want to challenge you to pray as the folks in California continue to lean in on this. In fact, I'm going to be in California later this week. I'll be speaking, by the way, for those around Southern California, I'll be at Calvary Chapel Downey on Sunday if you'd like to come and visit us. So this is this constant attack on parental rights. And it's interesting, as you said, that they've tweaked it just a little bit, but the exploitation that this opens up to, and it's very interesting because I was just saw where, the Biden administration lost 65,000 unaccompanied minors that they let into the country with these open borders. We've now found that 27 of those minors have been found dead by murder, suicide, or drug overdose. 400 of those so-called sponsors of these children have been arrested, many of them for exploiting, abusing, raping these children. This was done, the left says open borders was compassionate. That's the same arguments we're seeing in California with change. Oh, we want to be compassionate. Violating the laws of nature and statute that's not compassionate.
No, and this legislation moving forward has a lot to do with human trafficking.
Yes.
And California has the highest number of instances. I actually chair an anti-trafficking organization in Santa Barbara County. I know this issue all too well. What happened under the Biden administration is unconscionable. They knew exactly what was happening with those children being used and sold and trafficked across the border. They released them either to people who immediately started trafficking or sold them once inside the country. They set up that hotline and nobody was on the other end of it to pick up the phone.
We spoke with officials within the department who blew the whistle on these things. But this goes back to my earlier point of the spirit of lawlessness. I mean, we can have every safeguard in place. We can put the National Guard, we can put the Marine Corps on every corner. But ultimately, it is not going to solve what is ailing America. I mean, think about this for a moment. People who would intentionally traffic children, minor children, for sexual purposes. That is not a person who understands right from wrong or willing to acknowledge it.
I think I'll take it a step further, Tony. You're absolutely right. And we have such a problem, and a lot of people want to stick their heads in the sand. I understand it's such a difficult thing. Yeah. But I think we're being too desensitized, and I worry that we're losing our humanity. These people are being stabbed in broad daylight. This woman on the train in Charlotte, a woman walking her dog in Alabama was killed. This other woman, middle of the day in Philadelphia, murdered. Right. And no media coverage, and we just go on about our day. We hear about these children who are being found dead. Where is the outrage and the heartbreak and the response in the right way? And so I'm with you. We've got to find our faith and step fully back into our role to protect our most vulnerable.
Right. We need to pray. And I know that prayer has been something that's been mocked as of late. But the reason it's mocked is because it's effective for God's people to pray. Yeah. And in fact, James talks about that. If you're on our journey through Scripture later this week, we'll be in James chapter 5, where he talks about the effective prayer of a righteous man. And we're seeing some signs of that. There's some encouraging things among the young people, Casey, that we see turning back to faith that everything else has failed them. Yep. Government, institutions, and there is a return to Orthodox faith.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing Bible sales online, for instance, hit record highs in recent years. We're seeing a sort of Gen Z revival. You're seeing some of the most popular artists in pop music are Christians now, outspoken. People like Forrest Frank are sharing their faith and having the most viral videos on TikTok. So you're seeing these glimpses. I think it's sort of like a Solomon who went and tasted every pleasure and thing the world had to offer, and then you kind of come full circle and it's all meaningless. And I think that's where this generation is. You had everything from the internet and wealth, and it's kind of meaningless, and so they're looking for something deeper.
Kyle, we just have a little over a minute left. First, tell people how they can catch your podcast, and then secondly, ask the question, what are the young people looking for?
Absolutely. Thanks again, Tony, for having me on. It's Politically Basic on all socials. On X, it's Politically Basic without the I, all that good character limit. I think young people and all people right now are looking for goodness. They want the good life. It's found with Jesus Christ. So that's the only way. And so they are searching. And I think to Casey's great point, it's happening. We need prayer. We need the churches to step up. We cannot rely on government to give them that good life. The government is failing them, and God is going to be the way, the light, and the right path forward for them. So we need to encourage that with everything we've got.
I agree. Kyle, Casey, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you.